What's going down, everybody? It's Thursday. I'm here with Rohan Chakravarthi. I said it correctly this time. It's been about a year. I finally got it right. Nice to see you, Rohan. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, as always, man. Every Thursday, me and Ro, we got a great show for you. Going to talk about a lot of good things. The name of the show is 49ers. Can they put it all together this year? So we're going to be touching on those subjects. Talk a little bit about the offensive line, underrated players on the offense and defense, all that good stuff. Give us about 20 seconds. We'll be right back.
You're dialed into the right place. And now your host, Ryan Hensley.
All right. Today is November 16th, Rohan, and that means I'm supposed to be able to reapply for monetization.
There we go.
So I went to the page, went to click the button, and it wasn't available for me, of course. So I hit up the chat, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, give us another 24 hours, and you'll be cleared to reapply." And then I asked how long it takes, and they said up to a month, Rohan. So yeah, I don't know.
So 1 month on top of what you've
Yeah.
already. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is what it is, man. Hopefully it's sooner than a month, but I should be able to reapply for monetization sometime today or tomorrow, which is good. I've been waiting 3 months, and then they said up to a month. I hope it's not. I hope it's a lot faster. We'll see. But hey, what can you do, man? You can just roll
Yeah.
with the punches, as they say. But good to see you, Rohan, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Near Thanksgiving, that's a great time for everybody. You get to have some family time, things like that. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Spending some time with family soon, and I mean, yeah, everything's going well. How about you?
Good, man. You're gonna be flying back to Cali, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna be home for about a week and a half or so it'll be a fun time.
Right on, dog. Well, I do have some ways to monetize. Let me share those with everybody. The show is sponsored by myself and my mortgage company, my real estate and mortgage company. So if you want to buy or sell a home in California or get finance for a home, I can help you with that. I can also throw solar on your house. So please hit me up about those things. Also, Underdog Fantasy is a sponsor of the channel. If you use promo code Hensley, that helps me out. That helps you out because they'll match up to $100 of your initial deposit. Also, if you want to repair your credit, Blue Water Credit is an amazing credit repair company. The details are in the description for how you can get a hold of those guys. Just go to their website, fill out the form, let them know that Ryan G. Hensley sent you, and they'll give you a free credit evaluation. They'll run your credit, let you know what they can do for you, how much it's going to cost, and you can decide at that time whether you want to do it or not. A lot of people have been signing up, and I'm glad to hear it because credit is super important for your finances. Rohan, you're a young man. Let me ask you this while we're on the topic of credit before we dive into the 49ers. Are you on your credit hustle, man? Are you aware of your credit and are you working on your credit?
Yeah, me and my family, we are working on it. A lot of things, certain purchases we put under my bank account, my name, things like that to improve our credit while we can. So aware of it. Got to learn a little more, of course, but aware of it and trying to definitely bolster it as I'm young.
Smart man. You guys got a good family around you. I didn't know anything about credit when I was your age at all. So I just ruined it. And it took me until about the age of 27, 28 to get everything back on track. I learned the hard way. If anyone has any questions about how you can make your credit good or if you're a young person trying to figure out what you need to be doing, hit me up. I would love to help you guys. You can also contact me and schedule a 30-minute appointment. Details in the description for that of this video as well. So those are our sponsors. Make sure you do me a favor and do Rohan a favor, like this video and subscribe to our channels. I'm almost at 6K. It's weird. I grew super fast, and then this last 100 or so is taking forever. I'm unsure why, but if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit that 6K mark. And Rohan, I like to start off before we dive into the Niners. I like to start off positive every show. Today's positivity, if you follow me on Twitter, you might have been able to predict what I was going to be talking about today. I just see a lot of like unnecessary, hateful rhetoric. Just people like we're all Niner fans. Why are we fighting with each other about difference of sports opinions? Sports are not that serious unless the 49ers are paying your bills, which I imagine they're not. You need to just relax a little bit. People are allowed to have disagreements and see things differently, and you just have the discussions, debates. That's all healthy. But when you start being hateful and calling people names, it's just uncalled for, unnecessary. And I would like to just see everybody tone it down. I know that I'm just a small time YouTuber and I don't have much power or control over this, but I'm going to do my part and spread as much positivity as I can and just try to tone it down a little bit. We're allowed to disagree, we're allowed to debate, but we don't need to just like attack each other personally. One word in particular that's been bothering me lately is you hear it a lot is that person's a cancer or this person's a cancer. Like my dad died of cancer. I know everyone here probably knows someone that died of cancer. That's Cancer is the worst thing ever, man. So just be conscious of the words you're using when you're coming at people. There's other ways to say the same thing without going so extreme. Just tone it down a little bit. We're all 49er fans. We all want the same things. Even if you're not a 49er fan, to be honest with you, I don't care. I really don't. Like, I don't care if you're an Eagles fan, a Dolphins fan, all that's good, man. I like football. I'm trying to be a good person. I want everyone to just be good to each other because I got kids growing up in this world, and I want this world to be a better place. So I'm going to spread positivity whenever I can. Just tone down the rhetoric a little bit. That's my little bit of advice. Rohan, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's always, community is important with the 49ers fan base. And I think a lot of people sometimes, you get swept away, opinions and all that. I'm all for everybody having their own opinion. I think that also sparks great conversation. But, it's important not to get carried away with that. And it's important to make sure that everybody understands that, it's a human on the other side. It's not just regular online banter. It's a regular conversation with a regular human being. You do want to treat them as you'd regularly treat them in person. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. That's why, I try not to cross any lines whenever I'm on Twitter, whenever I'm having conversations with people and things like that. And I think you bring up a great point.
Amen, sir. And Jay Cruz says, I need to write some more loans in the meantime. Yeah, absolutely. One of the best things about doing this is being able to network and meet a ton of people. And so, like, regardless of whether I'm monetized on YouTube or not, the way I pay my bills is through real estate. And I've been able to, fortunate enough to help a lot of people that watch this show buy houses, sell houses, finance houses. And it's been great, man. Honestly, this is a very tough market for a lot of people in regards to real estate because the rates are kind of high. I locked a 6.5% FHA loan yesterday, which has actually come down a little bit from the 7% where we were at. Kind of positive in that regard as far as the rates are going. But yeah, it's tough. But because of this show and because of all of you people, I've been able to actually the last 3 months have been the best. It's been consecutively increasing, and it's because of people that watch the show and reach out to me. And I can't thank you guys enough. I appreciate it, and my family appreciates it very much. All right, man. Let's talk about these 49ers, brother. I wanted to get your opinion because we haven't talked since the Jags game, but did the win against the Jaguars change your opinion about the 49ers in any way?
I wouldn't say so. Maybe slightly. The reason is I anticipated the 49ers to pull the victory out, and I anticipated going into the bye week that they'd figure things out. I didn't think any of the issues the 49ers had weren't fixable. It's just how quickly would the fix occur. And we've seen in the past how the 49ers have come out of the second, like come out in the second half and just started the Jets running and things like that. And so was I surprised by the win and things like that? Not necessarily. Did it change my opinion? Maybe just slightly in the fact that they won so dominantly and they were able to do it so quickly. But I mean, I still think there's room for improvement for this team. It's just, when there is room for improvement and you're winning 34-3, that's a good sign. So I think the 49ers cemented themselves as one of the top teams in the league once again. And I think that this is kind of where we anticipated the 49ers would be. So it's a good sign. Wouldn't say I'm necessarily surprised.
Yeah, it's good that they were able to stop the skid, right? They were, three losing game skid, and they were able to stop that, and that was a big win. The Jaguars are one of the best teams in the NFL based on their record, at least. And so the fact that they were able to end that skid and get back and dominate the Jaguars the way they did, especially defensively, they looked phenomenal. Offensively, they were able to spread the ball around and become more diverse as an offense, get everyone involved, which was key, something I've been calling for all season. That was great as well. In regards to this, the 49ers in the past they usually start slow. Actually, it seems like the last couple of years they start slow and then they kind of find their footing and they take off and they go on a run. Do you think that's what we're on now? Do you anticipate that this is how they're going to play from here on out, or do you think there'll be more bumps in the road moving forward?
I don't think there will be. I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be some bumps in the road because I don't think they'll win out their schedule. But I do think that this is kind of the not the standard, but this is what you can expect from the 49ers. Because even if they play, if this is their ceiling and if they play just a notch under this, it's still a pretty dominant team. You just beat a 6-2 Jaguars team. You held a top 10 quarterback to 4 turnovers. You did a lot of good things in this one. And so I do think the 49ers, you have somewhat of a standard that you could play at for the next few games. But I mean, I'm still going to expect them to lose a few games. Probably right now, I'm expecting. I know when we talked last, we talked a little bit about the future. I'm expecting probably a loss at Seattle. I'm expecting probably a loss in Philly. Those are 2 losses. Might expect one more loss down the line and end at 11-6, which was my initial record prediction. But at the moment, there is a lot of confidence around the team, and I think you can look at the schedule, you can look at the opponents, and probably say the 49ers right now should be the favorites to win the NFC West.
What about Brock Purdy? Did the win against the Jaguars, did his performance against the Jaguars after having, you know, a bad game against the Browns and 2 poor endings against the Vikings and why can't I think who else? Vikings,
Browns, Vikings, and then Bengals.
Bengals. Yeah, so he ended poorly against those 2 teams. He played bad the whole Browns game, but he played really well again in this game, right? Now, Kyle did mention that first touchdown was the worst decision he's ever seen. To me, if you score a touchdown, I'm cool with it. I'm not going to nitpick it too much, but, I'm not the head coach of the 49ers. But in general, did Brock Purdy's performance, his bounce back against the Jaguars, change your opinion about him at all?
I'm being honest, no. I mean, Brock Purdy was put in a good situation. He performed. I thought this was one of his better games. He performed really well. You talk about after those first 2 drives where you had potential touchdown opportunities. Well, the first one was a touchdown. Second one, he potentially had a Deebo Samuel on a crosser, ended up not throwing it. 49ers get 3 out of that. He was pretty darn good out of that. Outside of that, even in those drives leading to the point where it was, he was pretty darn good. But to me, the issue hasn't been the situation that Brock Purdy was in this game, where the 49ers are comfortably up by 30 and things like that. In fact, he made some wild throws. The one to Kittle, I thought was an amazing throw. But to me, it's, can you carry your team when they most need you? That's the question that I've seen yet to be answered. That's the question that's going to happen in the playoffs. And that's ultimately why I said the 49ers, dating back to the beginning of the season, win a Super Bowl in 2023. I just don't know if that answer is going to happen this year. I just don't know if Brock Purdy will deliver like that in those situations this year. I think that Brock Purdy can deliver when the situation has been favorable, and for the most part for the 49ers, even going forward, it's going to be like that given the talent of their team and how he'll be able to play. I think he's a good quarterback for sure, but this doesn't really change too much in my mind because it's not a situation where, the team was counting on him necessarily and things like that. Whereas in the last 3 games where you're missing Trent Williams, you're missing Deebo Samuel, your team, it's a tighter battle than you anticipate and you have chances to win at the end. I think that you saw some faltering. And so those kind of experiences, even with a game like this, are going to linger in your head until Brock Purdy, gets back into the situation. I'm not talking about game-winning drives and things like that. I'm talking about can you string together a dominant performance when your team needs you, when your team is down in terms of players and maybe even in terms of score and things like that to put it together.
Yeah, and I know Worldwide says Purdy played so bad against the Browns that he gave the Niners a chance to win the game. I mean, look, man, go watch the game, dude. Like, watch the game back, man. If you think that Purdy played great in that game, I mean, I don't know what kind of conversation we could have. It's okay to say that Brock Purdy had a bad game. Guess what, man? All quarterbacks have bad games. Brock Purdy had a bad game against the Browns. That's just the facts, man. Like, I don't. That's just the reality, dude. I can't really debate with you outside of reality. That's just, I mean, Niners were what? I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your commentary, but let's be real here, man. Let's try to be real. Johnny Cesari says, smash that like button. And good morning, Ryan. Thank you very much. And you brought up Deebo Samuel, man, and Trent Williams. The 49ers are a different team, it seems like, when those guys are in. Is it Trent? Is it Deebo? Is it both? What's the difference when those guys are on the field?
I think how Shanahan described it, it's not really the on-field production as much Because if you look in the game, Trent Williams was injured. He was very clearly injured in certain pass protection sets. I think he probably had, but when I rewatched, I think he probably missed 4 or 5 blocked opportunities or chances like that where, it was clear he was probably at 50% in this one, not what Kyle said at 80%. He was not that good. And then Deebo Samuel, I mean, Deebo Samuel had the touchdown, but really, if you look at his production compared to Kittle, Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey, it's lower. Shanahan, though, made a good point. It changes the mentality of the team knowing that you got those guys, behind them. Should it change the mentality of the team? I'm not sure, but for some reason, it clearly does. I mean, it clearly elevates the team's spirits. I don't know if the on-field play changes too much when Debo is back there or when a 50% Trent is back there, but there's a clear mentality change, and I think that that's integral. I think that kind of shows they're the heart of the team. They're the guys who kind of are able to lead this team in a way with, with energy and things like that. And I think that has a clear reflection on the team with the way that they played. I think that's important, and I think the 49ers are, they're grateful for that. And I think it's little things like that where it's hard to, when you talk about, who the 49ers may have to move on of or who may retire, people don't usually think about those. They think about production. They think about things like that. And I think both players have good production as well. I mean, they've shown that they can be guys that, that can be forces to be reckoned with. But I think it's also those little things that are important that we don't necessarily see, but clearly it has an impact on team culture.
Yeah, and I want to respond to Nines Worldwide because I did mention this comment, and he says, "I'm just saying the weather was bad. No QB played good in that game. So when Purdy puts a drive together to win, he gets blamed for the loss. It's BS." All right, man. So the weather wasn't that bad, dude. There was a little bit of rain. That's standard football stuff. And here's the thing, man. Go watch the final drive, the one you're talking about, where he put them in a position to win. If there wasn't a holding call on Jawan Jennings, he threw an off-target throw that drive was over. But luckily, Jawan Jennings was called. There was a call for holding.
He almost threw a pick on the first play. I thought his game-winning drive against Minnesota up until the interception was better than the one against Cleveland. And he put the team in a position to win in Cleveland, and he didn't in Minnesota, right?
Yeah,
That's
he almost
the way it is.
he almost threw an interception. Then he threw an off-target pass, and there was a holding call that got them another set of first downs. Then he threw a 4-yard dump off to Brandon Ayuk, who took it 30 yards and put them in game-winning position. So really, that was Brandon Ayuk's doing right there, and it was very close to not even happening at all. So I just like to be realistic about these things, man. Go watch that drive again. Go watch the last 2.5 minutes of that Browns game again, and tell me that it was Brock Purdy that put them in the position to win the game. I just don't agree with that, brother. Okay, let's do this, man. I wanted to move on and ask you about some O-line moves that may be occurring right now. We saw Feliciano play for an injured Aaron Banks. Obviously, I think Aaron Banks is really good. He's going to be back. Trent Williams is kind of nursing that ankle, but he played fine. He'll be back. So we're going to have Trent Williams at left tackle. We'll have Aaron Banks at left guard. We'll have Jake Brendel at center. But Feliciano has showed to be one of the top 5 linemen. And I honestly, I've been wrong about a lot of things, but Feliciano is one thing I've been right about since we got him. I knew he was going to be one of the best 5 offensive linemen on this team, and I think he showed that in his time in practice, according to the coaches, and as well as in this last game. So what do they do with Feliciano? What do they do with Burford? What do they do with Colton McKivitz, in your opinion? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I hinted at this actually in my recent article. And I mean, you had to wait to see Feliciano in a game before you could make, because we don't see practice, only the coaches do. But you have to wait to see Feliciano in a game before you could declare, him over Burford or him in the conversation, because we only have one guy's sample size, right, in Spencer Burford. But Spencer Burford has not been good this year. Not been great this year. He's been all right at times. I thought this game actually he played fairly solid, but Kyle Shanahan talked about it before the game. They have discussed potentially putting John Feliciano in the starting lineup or in the lineup itself, potentially in a rotation with Spencer Burford, just because they believe he has shown he deserves to have reps. I mean, he showed it. He had a pretty darn good game. I'm pretty sure he had a clean slate. Didn't allow a pressure in how many ever snaps he played. He had a couple of really nice blocks, I thought, in the run game as well. I mean, he had a good game. I thought Spencer Burford also played fairly solid. So I think right now it's probably what you see from last year. Am I the biggest fan of rotations in game? No, I don't. I don't think that it's the best thing for the 49ers. But if it's the way that they can put their best players on the field at the same time, I think that that's something that you can consider. Now, to me, at offensive line, well, actually, no. I'll let you respond before we get to the second portion.
Yeah, no, I think unfortunately, I think that's right. I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to rotate Feliciano in with Burford and keep McKivitz at right tackle, assuming that he's able to play. But it looks like he was practicing. He had Colt McKivitz had an ankle injury after that last game, and I thought maybe this is an opportunity for them to see what they can do at right tackle outside of Colton McKivitz. But it looks like he's practicing, and he'll probably play right tackle. I think there's an opportunity to make a bigger move here for the 49ers in this next game and see what they got in a couple of the guys. Like, I would like to see Feliciano at right guard and maybe Jalen Moore at right tackle might be an option, or pop out Burford to right tackle. Maybe that's more of a natural position for him. I don't know. What I do know 100% is that Feliciano is one of the top 5 linemen on this team, and he needs to be on the field uh, a majority of the time, right? If Burford is not good enough to just clearly beat out Feliciano this year in his second year and has to rotate again, get him out of there. I mean, no disrespect to the guy, but I want the 49ers to have the best unit possible on the offensive line. It's been one of their weaknesses, particularly on the right side. And Feliciano needs to be on that field at all times. I really believe that. And then they just need to figure out that right tackle. You know what? You know what bugs me? And I always think about this, and maybe I shouldn't. But for real, like uh we could have Trent Williams left tackle, Aaron Banks at left guard, Jake Brendel at center, and we could have Feliciano at right guard all year, and we could have had DeJuan Jones at right tackle all year. That's what I wanted them to do. And
Yeah.
thinking about it drives me nuts because that's actually a really good offensive line, man. It bugs me a little bit, and I'm hoping they are more aggressive with making those changes at O line. We'll see what happens, man.
Now that's why I threw it back to you instead of continuing, because I wanted you to harp not only on the guard position but the tackle. That was going to be my point. I think the 49ers have to seriously consider making a move at tackle. Colton McKivitz, you talk about a guy who hasn't started, right? And so you might see lumps at the beginning of the season and hope for progress throughout the season. I haven't seen progress. I mean, Colton McKivitz is still bad. He's bad. That's just the way to put it. He's below average this season, and it's consistently been below average. I don't know if I've seen much improvement from Colton McKivitz in both facets of the game, in the run game and in the pass game. And it's not just him getting overpowered. It's also him just missing assignments as well. I don't think that he's the right fit right now, and I think that you have grounds to potentially try somebody out, which is why with his injury, I would not be surprised if the 49ers look to make a move. The issue is right now the guy who they might look to go to is a guy who hasn't played yet, because they have this. The 49ers went into the season with this kind of specialist kind of category, right? You had Jalen Moore at left tackle, who had usually been, he'd been seen as a swing guy, but you have him specifically at left tackle, and you have Matt Pryor at right tackle. Well, Moore has played. He's been all right when he's played. Pryor hasn't played, and if I'm being honest, I'm not sure how confident I am in Matt Pryor. He had a fine preseason, thought he had a pretty bad training camp, so we'll see how it goes if he ends up seeing the field, but I think there are grounds for a change. And if they don't make a change, they're telling us that they believe McKivitz is better than their backups, which is in a reflection of what they did in the offseason. Because if your backups are worse than what we're seeing on the field right now, that's a huge problem. That is a problem. And you should have addressed the depth like Ryan said, in the offseason, where you could have gotten things better. That's why I said tackle depth was going to be the most important thing on this team. The most important problem, even over the starting position, because if you don't have guys who you believe can compete, then you've got an issue. Now, as for tackles in the future, I do think that's why the 49ers did not move one of their first-round picks or second-round picks at the deadline. This is a strong tackle class. There might be 10 first-round tackle grades that teams give out. There's going to be a lot of tackle talent in this one, and the 49ers sitting at the back end of the first round are going to get, if they want to, are going to get a player worthy of being a first-round pick at tackle. I think that's a deal that they just can't pass up on this offseason. You've got a lot of good players in this class, and you might even go for a tackle in the second round as well. You have an opportunity in the 2024 draft to get your guys of the future at the tackle positions. Trent Williams, you don't know how much longer he's playing. Regardless, you're going to need a right tackle. And I think the 49ers are in a good position to do so. Maybe that's how they projected it out in a way as to what their plan was for this year. But, this is a good tackle class, and I think the 49ers definitely have to invest in it. They haven't invested really much in the offensive line. Not a first-round pick, right, since Michael Glenchie in 2018. The second-round pick only once, I believe, in Aaron Banks in 2021. They haven't invested too much in the offensive line. I think this is the year that changes.
Yeah, man, I'm going to bring up something also now that we're talking about this. And I promise for everyone watching, we're going to get positive here also. Well,
Oh,
at
100%.
least I intend to. But there's a couple roster spots that, like offensive line is one of them that I wanted to bring up. But also, here's something I wanted to share with you. I'm just springing this on Rohan. He doesn't know what's coming. But I posted this yesterday on Twitter, and a lot of people, 1.6 likes already. So,
Okay.
yeah, so people are agreeing. I'm assuming that they're agreeing, and that's why they're liking this so much. Let me get you guys a better angle. All right, so Elijah Mitchell this season, 30 carries, 73 yards, 2.43 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. Jordan Mason this season, 21 carries, 117 yards, 5.57 yards per carry, more than twice as many yards per carry. Every time Jordan Mason touches the ball, he runs more than twice as far as Elijah Mitchell does, and he also has 2 touchdowns. I know that people are talking about pass protection, all that good stuff. Cool, whatever. And obviously, we have CMC. We're good when it comes to running back 1, but I'm talking about running back 2 when CMC's out or when they need to give him a break, etc. End of games. I get the pass protection thing, but if it's the end of the game, are we really passing or we're just running the ball anyways? And can we just insert him to run the ball? I mean, I know people say, oh, you're tipping plays if you just put him in and all you do is run. But how many people across the NFL, how many teams across the NFL are really studying Jordan Mason? And when they see him come in, they're like, oh, we know he's going to run because he can't pass protect. I don't think that's going to go down. I think you can dial up more opportunities for Jordan Mason. And we've been saying it for about a year now because it's clear to all of us watching that he's by far the better runner. As far as, the dude is killing it. So help me understand. Is it really just pass protection? Is that what's going on? Why will Kyle Shanahan not give Jordan Mason more opportunities?
Now, my first answer to that is I don't know, because you are right. It brings up a good good point, and I'll say this because I've studied the numbers a little bit with these guys, and the reason that Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason have such a difference in their yards per carry is, in my belief, it's truly because of the blocking. You look at the yards before contact for both players. Both players can work well after contact. We've seen that in the past. But if you look at the yards per contact yards before contact per rush, Jordan Mason gets 3.8 yards of depth before even being touched. He gets 3.8 yards before contact per rush. Elijah Mitchell, on the other hand, is only getting 1.3, which means usually to me that relates to a blocking issue. Usually, if he's being hit that short from the line of scrimmage, it usually portrays to some issue with the blocking. And again, it's such a small sample size with only 30 carries and only 21 carries for Jordan Mason. But that's kind of one thing that I do point to. However, I can understand definitely the frustrations, because Jordan Mason has proven that he's been a good player. You can talk to pass protection. Another thing that I would anticipate comes in the discussion is receiving skills. Personally, I think Jordan Mason has shown flashes of being a solid receiver. In the 2 training camps that I've been to, in the film we've seen in regular preseason and games, I think he can be a solid receiver. However, I think the 49ers do prefer Elijah Mitchell in those packages. And so the reason that what they're trying to do when they take Christian McCaffrey off the field is have a guy who can not replicate, but resemble McCaffrey in those packages. And that's why they prefer also a guy who can be a receiving threat, which is where Mitchell comes into the fold. Now, is that logic the best? I don't know. I don't, because Mitchell has only seen 3 targets or 5 targets or so this year. It's not like he's seeing an exorbitant amount of targets in his throughout the games, and he's also been injured. Injuries have been an issue. The 49ers like Elijah Mitchell. The other thing maybe is potentially fumble issues. We know Jordan Mason had a couple of those in the beginning of the offseason. One thing Elijah Mitchell does not do is fumble the football. He's never fumbled in his career. But I mean, going back to your question, why is Jordan Mason not seeing the field? I don't know. I don't know. And I think that they did a fairly good job. I like the game plan they went with last week, which is limiting McCaffrey snaps in the run game, and then getting him more action in the passing game. Because if you get him out in space, the chances of him getting injured are less. You know, it's easy to be hit by 200-pound safeties or things like that when you're in space than being running into 300-pound linemen and then getting toppled. You know, so I like the way the 49ers adjusted this past week, but the reasoning as to why he might not use one running back over the other, I truly don't know, because I mean, we've seen that Mason can be a good runner. I mean, you just put up a stat where he's averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. Yeah, so I don't know.
Here's another question for you. I just thought of this in my head. I want to get your take. Let me know in the chat as well. But what's a better offensive lineup? Not line, offensive lineup. Tell me this. I'm really curious what you think.
Go for it.
CMC in the backfield, Brandon Ayuk, Debo, and Juwan Jennings at receiver, or Jordan Mason in the backfield, Brandon Ayuk, CMC, and Debo at wide receiver. What's a better lineup?
So you're saying CMC in the backfield?
CMC, you see, like they do it now, right? Juwan Jennings is just the slot receiver, and then you have Ayuk and Debo and CMC in the backfield, or CMC at receiver with Debo and Ayuk and Jordan Mason in the backfield.
I mean, I'm still inclined to go with the CMC package just because of what CMC does out of the backfield. I really like, when Kyle puts Debo or CMC out of the backfield, not because of running the football out of the backfield, but, there's so many different route combinations that you can have out of the backfield. You can have wheel routes, you can have flat routes, you can have Texas choice routes, that allow you to create mismatches. Because if you're going to the flat and then potentially turning up for a wheel route, that might have a one-on-one between McCaffrey or Debo and a linebacker, which you're going to take any day of the week. You have a Texas route, it looks like a flat route. You cut back inside, you have a linebacker beat again. I think that there are different schematic matchups that Kyle Shanahan likes, which also may refer to the point where he might prefer Elijah Mitchell because he might prefer him in those packages. But I mean, CMC in the backfield or Jordan Mason in the backfield, it also depends very situationally. This is a point where the 49ers are winning. They need a guy to close it out. I'd go to Jordan Mason. Why? Because even if they know that you're running the football, every time Jordan Mason's out there, the defense knows you're running the football. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry when the defense knows that he's
boxes. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'd go with him as a closer.
Yeah, I mean, against stacked box, Jordan Mason, every time he's running the ball, it's against stacked boxes, and he's still doing what he's doing, that's what I'm saying. It's more of a, like, for me, it's like, damn, I would like to see the package I talked about. Not necessarily that's like the solid foundational package for the 49ers, but I feel like, honestly, I think CMC he might be a better slot receiver than he is a running back. I mean, he's a great running back. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting the guy as a running back, but he might be a better slot. I think he would be an all-pro slot receiver, CMC. If that was his main position, I think he would be all-pro at that position. That's how good I think he is there. I think it would just be nice to see that mixed in every now and then. Jordan Mason in the backfield, and you got CMC, put him at receiver. I would love to see it. I think they did that with Mitchell in the backfield. I would just like to see it with Mason in the backfield. But Patel says Ryan likes to see packages. Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and pause on that one. Let's keep it moving, man. I want to ask you about the roster in general, man. How do you see the 49ers roster compared to the rest of the NFL? Is this the best roster in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't know if it's changed really. My thoughts on it, I still think this is probably a top 3 roster in the NFL. It truly depends on how you value a roster. If you're valuing it as, position doesn't matter in terms of you're just how much talent is on the team, you have to argue the 49ers are 1. But if you argue position does matter, then obviously other teams have a Jalen Hurts or a Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that elevates their roster because of positional importance and things like that. But you can't say the 49ers don't have one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in the NFL. I do believe that they are firmly in that top 3 category with the amount of all pros that they have. Now, roster is paper. Talent and how it ends up production is on field. Does the talent or does the roster play to what it should be on the field? That's a question that we can have, because I think in the losses, there are certain players who played below what their pay grade is and below what you expect out of them. I mean, certain guys went quiet. Javon Hargrave was one. Fred Warner, I thought, and Dre Greenlaw, I thought that their play dropped a little bit. You saw a couple more missed tackles than you anticipate from those two linebackers. I think overall the play dropped across the board, during the losses. And so that's the main question. Can that roster show out on the field like they're supposed to? I do think, though, if you talk specifically about the roster, it's a top 3 easily in the NFL.
Yeah, let's go. I want to push you and see if I can get it out of you. But who's the top one? Who's number one?
I think you can make certain arguments. I mean, I don't think Philadelphia's lost much. And the reason that I think I value a roster like Philadelphia's potentially a little more is, one, if you talk about positional importance, I think the quarterback there is better. What other positions are really important? Well, it's the trenches. I think their O-line is arguably the best in the NFL, where the 49ers might be in the bottom 20 right now. The bottom, I won't go that low. I think they're in the 15 range. I think they're in the 15 range like I anticipated at the beginning of the season. But where did you expect them to drop off this year? The defensive line, where they lost Javon Hargrave. Jalen Carter's a stud. He's good. And so I don't think there's too much of a drop-off there on that defensive line. And so that's where I'd probably point to Philly. I think that they've got good, talented receivers that match up with San Francisco. I think even if they don't have as talented of running backs, their scheme allows them, to flourish well on the ground. And I mean, Jalen Hurts allows them to flourish well on the ground as well. So I think that roster is pretty darn talented. I even would honestly put Kansas City up there in a mix, because I don't know on paper if their roster is as strong in terms of the amount of talent, but the way that defense plays, that defense is a top 5 defense in the NFL, in my opinion. And so that's where I'd also put them up there, because you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce on offense, and then you've got a good defense behind them.
If you're comparing the Eagles and the Niners just defensively, who do you have? Who do you have as the better defense, just on paper, roster wise?
That's tough, because again, if you just break it down right by position, I think they have fairly equal defensive lines. I think the 49ers have a strong defensive line. I think Chase Young bolsters that even more. I think they've got better depth now than the Eagles, so you might give the slight edge to the 49ers. But I still am inclined to definitely give the edge of the secondary to Philadelphia, because they acquired Kevin Byard. You got a good safety back there now to match with 2 elite corners in their system. I do think that those guys work really well. And then the 49ers, obviously, give the edge to the linebackers. So, it's a toss-up, I think, in between the two. I'd probably lean the 49ers slightly defensively. I probably would. But I would not be surprised if people pick the Eagles. And I think it's just right there. I think they got a good roster there, too.
Now, you talked about upcoming games and what you expect to be losses. Originally, before the season, I had the 49ers losing in Philadelphia and losing the first game to Seattle. I still kind of feel like that could be the case. Traveling to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, who are a really good team, is going to be tough. I kind of think, if I had to, I hate to say this to my Niner fans watching, but if I had to predict, put money on it, bet the house on it, I probably would go for the Eagles. Now, the Seattle game, originally, I thought that was going to be a loss too. I think the Niners are a lot better than Seattle overall. But playing in Seattle has always been tough for the 49ers. I expected them to split before the season. Sounds like you expect them to lose that one. That one, I'm more like 50-50 right now, but I could definitely see it as going as a loss. I think we beat Seattle at home, but in Seattle, I think that's going to be tough. Now, the Ravens, they come to the Niners, right? We don't travel to Baltimore, right? The Ravens come to Levi's.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might be the only edge that I would give to maybe pick the Niners on that one, but that one's going to be tough too. Lamar Jackson is 18-1 against NFC teams. That's like a stat you can't argue with very much,
Yeah. They're elite. They're very good this year.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe 3 more losses is something this fair. Originally, I had the Niners at 10-7 or 11-6. But I said 10-7 because I anticipated injury. I thought we would be seeing some Sam Darnold at quarterback this year. Knock on wood, so far that has not happened. And hopefully it continues not to. But I could definitely see 11-6 is realistic for the 49ers where they finish this season. Let's get a little positive, though. I want to ask you something about underappreciated players. Let's start with the offense. who is the most underappreciated player on the 49ers offense? We hear a lot about the big name guys, but I mean, and maybe it is a big name guy that's just not even appreciated as much as he should be. But who do you think the most underappreciated player on the 49ers offense is?
This is tough because you are right. There are a lot of big name guys. I think the obvious answer, especially given the recent discourse, is Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I think that people people are saying Brandon Ayuk is having a disappointing 2022 or 23 season. I think that that's ridiculous. I mean, when you look at it, I broke this down in an article. I mean, when you look at it statistically, I don't know how you can point to that conclusion. Brandon Ayuk right now is 38th in well, entering last week was 38th in targets. He was 11th in yards. He's been really efficient with his opportunities this year. Yards per route run, he's number 2 behind Tyreek Hill, which means he's getting not only depth, but he's also making the most of his opportunities. He's 5th in the league, I believe, behind 4 speedsters in yards per catch and things like that. So there are a lot of things when you look at Brandon Ayuk's statistics that tell you, damn, this is a good receiver. He's separating well. He's getting downfield. He's being targeted downfield at a high rate. He has a significant amount of explosive plays. It was at 13 before this game. And he doesn't have many drops. He has 2 drops. I mean, the 2 drops were crucial drops. Don't get me wrong. And those 2 drops were drops you definitely want to have back. But it's not like he's dropping passes like in general, like a lot of players have in the past. And so I think that when you look at it, Brandon Ayuk has had a really darn good season. The only thing that's been lacking was the touchdowns. Well, guess what? Brandon Ayuk entering this past game was 5th on the team in red zone touches. He was tied with Kyle Juszczyk in terms of targets. Kyle Juszczyk with 4. He had 2 touchdowns, which both came against Pittsburgh in week 1 when they were deeper in the red zone. Those are where the opportunities came from. It's not like he's getting, it's not like they throw fade routes. It's not like they throw quick slants to him in the red zone at the 5-yard line and things like that. Why? Because they run the football. They run the football more than any other team in the red zone. Christian McCaffrey leads the league in red zone touches or red zone rushes. He also has the most targets on the team entering this past game with 7. Him and Kittle had 7 targets. Deebo Samuel at 5. Kyle Juszczyk at 4. Then comes Brandon Ayuk at 4. So I think the way, if you were to make an argument, you could argue Brandon Ayuk's underutilized in a way, underappreciated. Now, I'm not going to go that way because the 49ers were the 5th most effective team in the red zone entering last week. And I mean, I think they still did a pretty darn good job. So they're being efficient with their red zone opportunities as well. It's just they got so many mouths to feed. So underappreciated wise, I'm going Brandon Ayuk.
I think you made a good argument. If you don't, it's funny. If you look at most of Brock Purdy's 20-yard throws, he completes like a lot of 20-yard throws, right? He's not really going like 30, 40 yards ever, but he does go 20 yards pretty often. And I would estimate, because I was looking at it the other day, I mean, I'm just estimating. I think 95% of them are to Brandon Ayuk. Those deep crossing routes to Brandon Ayuk, that's been his bread and butter all season, and he's wide open on those passes. I don't know why defenses aren't locking in more on that, because that seems to be like the most common big shot play that the 49ers take, and they take it often, actually. Those deep crossing routes by Brandon Ayuk have been wide ass open all year, and
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk is a big reason that that's the case. Also Kyle dialing it up. And so Brock and Ayuk have connected on a lot of those big plays. I think people are really undervaluing that. I agree. I think that's a good pick. Another one I would give you, though, also, I think someone that we underappreciate a little bit is probably Aaron Banks, man. I think Aaron Banks has been nothing but solid at that left guard spot next to Trent Williams, and he's going to be a factor for this team for years to come, I would imagine. He is one. If you look at this team, Trent Williams, he's kind of old. He might be retiring. Center Jake Brendel, he's on here on his. I think he has one more year on his contract, right? I think
He got a 4-year, but yeah, it's essentially a 2-year deal.
Yeah, and then you got Burford, who's been a little bit lackluster, right? I don't know what's going to happen with him. Who knows if he'll be the starter next year or by the end of the season? Feliciano might replace him. McKivitz has one more year with him. He is not the answer at right tackle. So if you look at the long-term answers on this offensive line, I see one, and that's Aaron Banks. And he's been nothing but solid. So I think Aaron Banks is a little bit underappreciated on that left side of the offensive line.
I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk defense. Let's switch to the other side of the ball. And remember, guys, in the chat, we're not talking about the most valuable player or anything like that. We're just talking about underappreciated. So on the defensive side of the ball, who is the most underappreciated player on the 49ers defense?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple actually. If you talk about it, I think that there are a few that come immediately to mind. If I were to go with one, I would probably I'm battling between two. I'm honestly going to go though Charvarius Ward. I think Charvarius Ward had a few slips recently that has caused people to question whether he can be a cornerback one, and I think that those slips were warranted. I think that the debate about him is a little warranted, but I think it's tough playing as a corner in this league, playing as a corner in this team, and I think that he's the first guy who we could truly say has been a true CB1. Richard Sherman was here. I think Ward has a bigger impact overall than at the back end of Sherman's career, especially in that scheme because that was more of a zone scheme. This is more of a man press scheme. And so I would go with Charvarius Ward. I think Charvarius Ward has been, without him, I think the 49ers struggle more because you know how there's a symbiotic relationship between coverage and between pass rush. I think he is the one who helps make that happen more, the most out of anybody in that secondary. And so I had a couple of guys, but I think that I'm going to share Charvarius Ward some love. I think he's still a top end corner. I think he's a low end CB1 or a mid end CB1, and I think he's been underappreciated probably throughout his career. I think I'm going to give him some love again.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I see some people in the chat talking about Greenlaw, Armstead. I think Greenlaw is a good one. Armstead is a good one. But Armstead getting paid a lot of money. So I mean, maybe that doesn't factor into this. Maybe that shouldn't matter as far as whether we appreciate him or not. But I do think people bring up Greenlaw more and more, at least on the 49ers, maybe not throughout the NFL. But to me, the only answer is this is the only answer to me.
I think you're the guy who my second was. Go ahead.
Tashawn Gibson, man.
Yeah.
Tashawn Gibson has 321 coverage snaps, only allowed 1 first down, and 0 touchdowns. I don't know what it is I like about Tashawn Gibson that just flies under the radar for so many people. Maybe it's because he's, a free agent that we signed and he's only been here a couple years now. I don't know what it is, man, but Tashawn Gibson is actually remarkable. Like almost perfect in regards to what he's been doing for the 49ers on this team and the back end. Tashawn, we always talk about Huff, but for some reason, Tashawn Gibson is just flies under the radar, underappreciated by this fan base. And I really think he is the no-brainer on this one. He is so underappreciated and undervalued. I think we need to give Tashawn Gibson some of his flowers.
Yeah, no, I think Tashawn Gibson, he was my second guy. Reason I probably don't go to Tashawn Gibson is just because maybe it's just me thinking about it wrong, but I don't think he's the guy who could fill Jimmy Ward's role, which is why the 49ers are a little different defensively in that, the big nickel kind of role. That's where he was a little more inconsistent last year when Jimmy Ward was out. But I think as a safety, he's been very solid. And I mean, that's why he deserves his flowers as well. He don't get paid that much. He's an older guy. People write him off. But Charles Gibson's been pretty darn good in coverage this year. I think what you mentioned, 321 coverage snaps without a touchdown or something like that is what you mentioned. Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty solid this year for sure. And he's been helpful for the 49ers in manning the back end on that defense, being versatile as well a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. He's not that big hitter that, maybe 49er fans are used to, and maybe that's why they don't notice or pay attention to what he's doing out there. Like, I think that's why a lot of people love Huff, even though he's missed a few tackles this year. But he's a big hitter, right? And that's exciting for people. But Tashawn Gibson, man, he is just damn near perfect in his play and coverage. And I think it just goes undervalued and unappreciated. And it might be because he's not being targeted because he's doing such a good job that there's not a lot of targets going his way. And so since you don't hear his name, maybe that's why he's being underappreciated so much. But I think he should definitely be, he is the most underappreciated, in my opinion. Right. So, okay. I want to move on, though, and ask you about the biggest concern for the 49ers moving forward. And then I got one follow-up question after that. But what do you think? If you have a big concern, what's the biggest concern for the 49ers moving forward this season as far as chasing our ultimate goal, which is a 6th Lombardi?
Two of them. One, offensive line injuries, because I don't know if they can win a Super Bowl or anything like that without Trent Williams. I mean, he's the most. When you talk about most valuable player and most important player, I think that you can have two separate distinctions. Most valuable player, goes to the quarterbacks and things like that. For me, it's Christian McCaffrey for this team. And then the most important player is Trent Williams, because without him, I don't know how well this team can do against the top competition. And so that's the way I'll go. But the second one is the reason that I've kind of said throughout the season, and it still stands, even though my opinion on him has changed from the beginning of the season. I think he's shown that he can be an improved quarterback, and that's Brock Purdy. The reason is just, frankly, I just don't know if he's going to be the guy that wins the Super Bowl in 23. Predicted at the beginning of the season, I don't think the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl in 23. Attributed it to the quarterback. And I don't think there's quarterback issues. I just don't know if he, like I said earlier, can put this team in when if the team needs him to carry them on his back. I just don't know if that's going to be the case in 2023 specifically. And so that's kind of the way that I'm going to look at it, because unfortunately, I'm not as optimistic as others about our Super Bowl chances this year. And when I say this, I'll clarify again. I don't mean that I don't think the 49ers cannot get to the playoffs, not get to the Super Bowl. I think they can get to the Super Bowl. I think they can get to the NFC Championship. And the ceiling of this team definitely can win a Super Bowl. Because, I mean, it's all that matters is just that one game, how teams play in that one game. However, when we get there, I just don't know if we're going to have enough to beat some of those powerhouses in the AFC.
Yeah, you jumped to my next question, but that's what I was going to ask you about the Super Bowl. So you read my mind, man. But yeah, I think the biggest concern for me is Colton McKivitz, the overall health of the 49ers team with some key players like Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, um, Fred Warner, guys like that. I have to stay healthy. CMC, obviously. And then Kyle Shanahan, can he be clutch in the big games, in those big moments? Is he going to outthink himself, or just make those errors at the crunch time, like when he has that opportunity? Those are my concerns. But I do want to elaborate a little bit more on what you were talking about, because that was honestly my final question for you in regards to these 49ers. Is I know you haven't been high on their possibilities of winning a Super Bowl. You said you think it may be because of quarterback issues is the biggest reason why you don't think it's going to happen. Can you elaborate a little bit further? I personally think the 49ers have a possibility to win a Super Bowl. Now, is it I do have the same concerns, right? All the ones I just mentioned about my biggest concerns moving forward, that I think those things could stop us. But I think Brock Purdy, as long as the defense is playing well, as long as the run game's playing well, and as long as Kyle Shanahan is doing his job, but most importantly, as long as Kyle Shanahan is making sure that Brock Purdy is protected, I think if all those things are in place, I think the 49ers could win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. Not necessarily that Brock Purdy's going to carry them there, or, put the team on his back in the Super Bowl and win the thing. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I think if everything is involved and everything is working well, and we're firing on all cylinders, I still think the 49ers can pull it off. Can you elaborate more on your opinion and why you don't think they can? Oh, you're muted, bud.
There we go. I do think that there is a chance for them to win. But when you look at the top teams in the NFL, we just had this discussion with the Eagles. We had this discussion, about Philadelphia and how they match up. First of all, you're likely going to have to go to Philadelphia and defeat the Eagles in the link this year. Just unfortunately, with the 3-game losing streak, barring an unexpected change with Philadelphia, they likely end up higher than you on the standings. I think the 49ers can be number 2 in the conference. I think that's still in the realm, but I don't know if they're going to be the number 1 seed, which is crucial because you're going to have to do the same path that you had last year. And I think the 49ers had a chance against Philadelphia. I said that even though I predicted the Eagles to win that game. But it's not only them. I mean, you've got a couple of really solid teams over there in the AFC. The Chiefs are very good. I talked about them having a top 5 defense, as well as, a quarterback that can carry you to any win possible. You have if you're talking about other teams, the Baltimore Ravens have been phenomenal this year. They executed a high level. We're going to be able to see them in Christmas on Christmas weekend in week 16. So they operate at a high level. I think that they're another team that, you could consider a force to be reckoned with. And so I think there are a lot of different things. This is a good point. I don't think they have to play 3 road games in the playoffs. But I think they will definitely have to play 1, potentially 2, depending on who gets the 2 seed between them, between Detroit and things like that. And so I think that it'll be an intriguing path. I just don't know if when you look at all the obstacles, are they going to be accomplishing all of them against good teams with good quarterbacks that can execute at such a high level? That's the big question to me. It's because we've seen such a huge sample size of the 49ers dominating opponents, being up 34-3, being up, the way the first 5 weeks went. The 49ers weren't even in the game for all of those games. It was clear out blowouts. Then you talk about the last 3 weeks where the 49ers have been in the game. Or, the last 3 weeks before this one. 49ers were in the game. And quarterback was definitely not the only issue in these. I thought Brock Purdy played pretty darn well in the Minnesota game up until, for the first half. I thought that was a really good first half. But I think there are a lot of issues that you could compile. But the issue is when those issues do compile, can you have your quarterback carry you to a victory? That's the question I have yet to see be answered through the first 17 games of Brock Purdy's career. That's what I'm looking for. And maybe that my answer changes if I see a change in that to that question later on in the season. I don't envision it at the moment. And does this mean, do I think Brock Purdy can't win a Super Bowl? No. I think that that's possible. It could even be possible in 23. I just don't envision it happening in 23. And potentially we'll see what goes on in the future.
Yeah, I think honestly, this is all like the roster's in place. You know, Kyle Shanahan said that Brock Purdy's the real deal. I feel like this is on Kyle. If anything, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, or if they fall short prematurely before they probably should, I think it's on Kyle. He's put all these people in place, right? This is year 7 for Kyle Shanahan. He made the decision to move off of the guy he drafted and go with Brock Purdy because he said he's the real deal. If the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl, I'm not going to even put it on Brock Purdy. I'm going to put it on Kyle Shanahan for putting them in this position. I hear what you're saying, though, because Brock Purdy is a young quarterback. Will he ever develop into the kind of quarterback that you could just put the team on his shoulders and he'll carry you? I don't know. I don't know about that. But if he's going to, it's probably not going to be at 23, 24 years old. It'll be in the future if he is able to do that. So we'd have to allow time for that. We'll see. Patel brings up a good point, too. Detroit will get number 1 seed barring injury. I think Detroit's schedule does look a little better than the Eagles' schedule. They have a tough schedule ahead of them. So I could see Detroit being the number 1 seed in the playoffs. That would be wild if the Detroit Lions ended up being the number 1 seed in the playoffs. But yeah, man, overall, I'm optimistic that the 49ers can do it. But I named the show 49ers. Can they put it all together this year? And I think that's the key. They have to put it all together. Like everyone has to be healthy. The defense has to be clicking. The run game has to be clicking. Kyle has to be in his bag in order for us to win the Super Bowl, because I just not going to put it all on Brock Purdy as a second-year quarterback to be out, put the team on your shoulders and go win it for us, right? I don't see him as that kind of player, at least yet. So it all has to come together, and I think that's the major question. Can they put it all together? And I think ultimately that boils down to Kyle Shanahan. So we'll see, brother. Tomorrow I'm going to have Eric Crocker on the show at 9 a.m. Make sure you guys tune in for Crocky. Rohan, what do you got going on the channel? And make sure you tell everyone where they can subscribe. Also, the details are in the description where they can do that too.
Yeah, no, you like always, you search up my name on YouTube, on Twitter. You can find out my content there. Also write for Niners Nation, so be sure, if you like written content, be sure to go check it out there on the channel. Not sure if we'll have a show tomorrow. I am traveling, so we will see whether that can come together. Might do something on Saturday instead, but no, it's always, as always, it's been a fun show. We talked about a lot of different things, a lot of important things, both through this week and going forward. Appreciate your time, Ryan.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Make sure you guys are like this video, subscribe to the channel. I've been trying to give something away to you guys over the last couple games, but no one's been able to nail the score predictions. If you want to nail the score prediction, let me know. Rohan, do you got a score prediction for this game? I didn't ask you. We didn't even talk about the Bucks. We've been talking about the Niners big picture so much. I guess I'll do that with Crocker tomorrow. But do you have a score prediction for this game coming up?
Yeah, I'll go maybe 27-10.
Yeah, I think Niners going to kick everyone's ass. But look, if you guys want to leave a score prediction in the comments of this video, not in the chat, in the comments after the video, go back, leave a score prediction. If you guess it right, I have a 49ers beating sitting right over here that I'm wanting to give away for the last 3 weeks. Nobody's been able to nail it. Hopefully one of you guys does it this time. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with Eric Crocker. Thanks so much for being here, Rohan. Make sure you guys are like this video, that you subscribe to both of us. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 9 a.m. Me and Eric Crocker. Thanks so much, guys.